Welcome to Sales Bites by Journey, where we talk about everything you need to know to be a killer at sales. I'm your host, Will Jenkins. Let's get it. Hello. Welcome to Sales Bites by Journey. Today we have Carlos Reyes, Senior Contract Specialist at Emerge. Carlos, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you, Will. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Today we're going to dig in and talk a little bit about fleet sales. I know that you've had really large fleets, different types of carriers that you've worked with over your career, and it's not always easy to crack in and get those larger opportunities to want to work with you, but you've got a knack for that. So talk to us a little bit about how someone who's trying to develop their book of business with larger carriers can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, thank you, Will. I appreciate it. So, I think oftentimes we try to reach out for the larger carriers right away in the assets, but ultimately, like any other phone call, right? If it's a smaller regional carrier or an owner operator, you have to have a plan in action, right? Have a reason why you're calling. You don't have to have all the answers, but have some sort of a solution when you're having that cold call or that warm email, right? Ultimately, just calling somebody and then you get stuck on the phone call or you get redirected to a different question. It just really helps you build that right homework, right? Get that right homework ahead of you. Know who you're talking to. Right? You never know who might be answering the phone, if it's a VP or regional director, or it could be a load planner. Every single person, no matter of the title, is a very integral part of that organization. So represent yourself, right? And that also means come prepared, right? You can make cold calls all day long, but it's important to be prepared for each call, right? It's only going to make you better and build that confidence. But when you're calling to a larger fleet, ultimately, you're asking them right away is that, what is it that they need right now within their network that they need help filling in, right? Where's the immediate impact now? Have something ready on that phone call where you can provide a solution somewhat instantly, right? Again, that might turn into a no, but you're getting data. And when that's the key to anything that we do here in sales and carrier sales or sales operations is ultimately how much data can you get? And that's data, right? So when you're on that phone call, if it's a no, or it's a, hey, sorry, we're not adding new providers right now. Okay, thank you very much. But is there something that I can help you with now or down the future? Is there anywhere, how many terminals do you have? They might not tell you instantly, Hey, yes, I have a lot of trucks that are going to point A to point B. But if you can open up to them and they might tell you, yes, I have 14 terminals across America. That's data, right? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, cool. I'll send you an email as if you can let me know what type of terminals and where they're at. I would love to connect again, right? So that's data right there. So ultimately is being able to, people build a confidence level. They are people as well, right? They have a job too. They have jobs to be efficient for their network. How can you meet that? How can you meet them in the middle? So for me, I do a lot of research. I might do a little bit more research than an average Joe. But I like to know who I'm talking to on their phone, right? And ultimately, I like to let them know who I am as a person, right? Not just who I am where I work at. Hey, my name is Carlos Reyes. I like to find commonality with people. I played baseball. There's a lot of other individuals, both women and men, who've played sports in college. I like to connect, right? I like to find that common ground. And that just, helps build that next level of engagement.
Awesome. So one of the things you mentioned about fleet sales that is probably maybe a little bit different than a transactional call is doing your research and having something to offer or being ready to ask questions that allow you to get data that you can use in future conversations. So if I'm a new rep and I'm reaching out to a fleet, maybe it's a large regional or a large national fleet, and I'm trying to make my first call, what types of things would you do prep-wise for research to be prepared to make that call?
Oh, looking at if they have a company website, that's huge, right? Understanding the About Me page, who they are. Oftentimes you might see larger fleets have list their customers, right? And then being in this industry, you kind of have an idea where most of these customers are shipping to and from DCs, or they're from different warehouses. And also LinkedIn has been really big, right? So it's almost impossible not to know about a carrier these days with websites and information. We're in the age of information more than ever now. So doing that little bit of research and understanding the carrier has been in business for 100 years, 30 years, 25 years, understanding who the founders, understanding how they got there. It's really actually interesting understanding how 10,000 truck carriers started with one truck. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a story right there. And I like to talk about that. I like to talk to, how did the company got founded? Those are really good, interesting conversations because people who work at these fleets are very excited about working there. They're also very passionate. They like telling the story that they started in 1950s, right? Not them individually, but the company, because that's like a
Hmm.
really exciting, realm of what they do. It's not something that, hey, I'm just here because, I just, I want a job. No, people are actively excited to work at these legacy carriers, as I say, right? Because you see
Yeah.
them on the road
Yeah.
every day, right? I see them on the road. And I'm like, oh, hey, I know that carrier. I just talked to that carrier, and that's exciting, right? When my wife drives everywhere, I'm always taking a photo. Like, hey, I know that carrier. I'll send it to one of my, the VPs that I work with, or load dispatchers or load planners, and like, hey, I seen one of your trucks on, and they get excited, right? Or the best part is when they're on your load and you send them that photo. That's even like,
Yeah.
wow, like that's full circle for me, 100%.
Totally.
But
Totally. So,
ultimately, research, 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 research.
so let's talk a little bit about, what types of things you can do as a rep to differentiate yourself specifically. So obviously every organization is going to have key differentiators that are distinct to them. But let's talk personal, right? So, hey, I'm trying to reach out to a fleet. I've done a little bit of research. I want to stand out against the rest of, the thousands of other brokers who are trying to get their capacity. What are some things you think you can do as an individual to stand out to a fleet and kind of earn their trust?
Yeah, 100%. So obviously, setting up a call right away, sending an email like, hey, I would like to connect for 5 minutes. Oftentimes, if you don't have a piece of business to offer right away with a solution after your research, it's really important to come off with some sort of empathy within your cold email, your cold call, right? Being able to, hey, I would love to connect within 5 minutes. If you're not the right person, who can I connect with, or who, might be in your organization that might help me figure out, where your back calls are needed, or, are you looking to add new customers in your network? But being able to ask the right questions, really, for me, what's been very successful is, again, is doing that little bit of research. It shouldn't take that long. Just figure out who you're talking to, and make sure you're spelling the name right when you're emailing, because I've seen a lot of mistakes happening a lot, right? But
Yep.
don't rush the process. Really, take that time because it's going to pay back dividends, right? But being able to take that time out of your day, develop yourself individually as a person, but ultimately, what is your secret sauce? For me, it's connecting with others, right? Getting someone on the phone, understanding them is instant for me. So what's my approach on how am I going to get there? I don't turn a no. I look at it as, okay, this is my outreach. This is who I want to speak to. How am I going to get there, and how can I get that phone call? And so I kind of get into the steps of, cold emailing, or reaching out to them, or, we have a large network. We all know a lot of people. Hey, how can I get in touch with this VP at this company here? Do being able to be personable is very much a big part of this business. Even though if you are very timid and very shy, there's still a lot of, you know, gold. There are a lot of really good wins that are involved when you're trying to do some sales outreach.
Totally. Okay. So my last question here is going to be, how do you maintain those relationships with the fleet, and how do you manage their expectations, which might be a little bit different than maybe
Mm.
an owner operator, or maybe a carrier that doesn't have as expansive of a fleet? I think there's a little bit of nuance to managing a 1 or 2 thousand truck fleet. And certain reps haven't had that experience, so they might not know the expectations that that carrier has of a new broker. So, how do you manage that?
Oh, setting up like cadences, outreach cadences, right? Consistency, right? I think oftentimes we get excited, for a new rep to onboard a large fleet, right? And they have a conversation and they say, I'm going to get all their 10,000 trucks. And in reality, you might only get 1% of the fleet that needs help. And it could be the smallest regional part of America where it's not as dense, right? So, but building cadences for like every shipper that has a need is you're doing the same way for a carrier, right? You're building sales cadences, you're doing follow-ups, you're not trying to be overburdened, you're not trying to say, hey, calling them every day and they might have gave you the answer already, but you're calling them back with the same question. So don't dilute your experience, being able to be genuinely build a real good cadence on when to follow up. It's not call them Monday, Wednesday, Friday and ask the same question, right? But it's play on each question because that's called natural growth, right? If you ask a question on a Monday, find out from Monday to Tuesday how you can help them with that solution. If you don't have anything, try to find another way to get another solution or a question on Wednesday and again on a Friday. But ultimately, it's building a cadence because the more you do that, it's going to naturally show someone that you care, that you genuinely want to help them. And ultimately, you get better results, not just because, like, hey, you're looking for how many trucks, but again, it's that data points, right? You might get up like, hey, listen, Carlos, oh, thank you from and you know more than anyone is in this industry, things change really quick, right? Totally. New fleets get a new customer all the time. So what happens on a Monday might change on a Friday because those in larger fleets, they have sales reps and they're out there going getting that business. So that's my actions are helping them bridge that gap as well. So it's ever changing, but again, it's building a cadence to be able to ask the right questions and also just you're here to help or sometimes you're just here to ask someone how their day is. And that goes a long way.
Another thing that I think about just from my time developing relationships on the carrier side is understanding that they have the same expectations as like top enterprise style shippers, right? So if you've got a massive fleet that's got a direct carrier relationship and they're hauling a one-off load for you, that's a backhaul to get back to their direct carrier or their direct customer, and the appointment is incorrect, right? So now that truck will not be unloaded and they can't take their outbound load for their direct customer they've had for years. They're going to respond differently than a standard transactional carrier might because they understand the ramifications of missing that shipment on that truck they had planned. And so I think new reps sometimes downplay the importance of expediting, working through those challenges because I got to find a way to get this truck unloaded because it might damage the relationship of whatever, contractual setup I'm trying to figure out with them if we don't respond properly. Not to say that you shouldn't do the same to help a different carrier, but that, man, this 1,000 truck fleet that works directly with this customer outbound, they might never haul another load for us if we don't get this truck unloaded or if we don't respond properly.
I've seen it happen. Believe it or not, Will, I've seen it happen time and time and day. Newer, younger reps, or not even necessarily younger reps, just newer reps in the industry, or people who in transition to a sales rep or a carrier sales rep, they get really excited. I got this fleet. I got this person. I booked my first load, but then everything goes wrong, right? But let's go back to the beginning and the details, right? Did you willingly know that this load this customer, this shipper, this receiver takes 4 to 6 hours to unload, and that truck needs to get back to their domicile or their customer, the only reason why they took this load or this lane is to get back to their direct customer that they desperately need, or else they would have just took the load, or they would have just went back, to their domicile with an empty load, right, or empty truck, and essentially, like, you can hurt the trucking company if you're not listening to the little details, right? So it's important to slow it down, understand what their needs are, and ask questions, right? Ask your internal team, hey, how long does this shipper load? How long does this receiver unload? And then you can make a better solution or a decision like, okay, this might be a right fit. And if that load doesn't work, hey, it's okay. Ultimately, because you didn't hurt that relationship. They're going to trust you. Thank you for letting me know. I cannot hold my truck for another day. It needs to load my direct customer. They're going to thank you in the long run but I've seen newer reps try to force a shipment to a fleet that absolutely needs to get back home for a reason. And it's important, just again, back to those little details.
Totally, man. So a couple quick points that you mentioned. Research, really important. Outreach cadence. Hey, how do I become relevant? Maybe not say the same thing, but provide some value based on information that I found out. And then also just being straight up with people. Hey, I'm trying to figure out the right fit. I don't want to put you in a position where your truck is in a bad spot and you're unable to load for your direct customer. So maybe this isn't the load. People respect that transparency.
100%. 100%. And that's how you build relationships. Not for today, but for tomorrow.
Yeah, man. I'm going to remember that for a long time. Not for today, for tomorrow. So we appreciate you joining us on Sales Bites and dropping some knowledge here on the carrier sales side of the game, man. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you, Will. Thank you so much.